To receive an Aeon's blessing is the highest honor granted by the gods of Honkai Star Rail. It is a statement that a certain individual represents a path so thoroughly that the Aeon themselves gives the person access to their power. And this is what makes an Emanator an Emanator. But since every single Aeon is unique and views their Emanators in different ways, they end up giving their favorite followers different abilities in different ways in a massively ranging amount of power, meaning that no two Emanators are the same and it's relatively impossible to power scale them. However, through what Hoyo has provided us, we can get a general idea of what nearly every pad's Emanators are about. So in this video, I'll be taking on the grand challenge of explaining how each and every single Emanator got their powers, if possible according to path, and what their abilities are. So without further ado, this is every Aeon's blessing explained. But first, 6-7 finally happened. Thank you guys so much for achieving the brain rot number for playing Arcadia. We are throwing a party in the Discord to celebrate, so stay tuned for that. And I'm streaming Zenless Zone Zero later today with Keche the 7th, and I'll be streaming viewer polls for Evanescia the day after for her release. Busy week, gonna be a ton of fun. Do not miss it. On to the video. Okay, so first things first, I want to establish that there are Aeons that do not have noted Emanators, so there is no way for us to know what they do or how they work at this time. So for pads like Trailblaze, Order, and Permanence and Veracity, we're gonna have to skip those for now. But to go in alphabetical order according to the Aeon's names, let's start with Aha's Emanators of Elation. And we know of two of them: the all-powerful Noblesse Worm and the last Emperor of the Dark Zone, Silverwolf herself. And the way that Aha seems to choose their Emanators is on a basis of, well, does this person entertain Aha? And how long can they entertain Aha for? Because just as we've seen in both examples, Silverwolf and the Worm, Aha is willing to give their Emanators access to all of their power so long as they entertain the Joy Seeker, which is just Aha. And to do this is to simply just use the limitless nature of Aha's blessing to push the limits of the universe. The reasons for doing this don't exactly matter as long as you are going above and beyond with an undying drive for progression. Aha won't lose interest. However, if someone like, say, a Worm doesn't do anything with the power Aha gives them, the Aeon will simply get bored and take the power back violently. And of course, the power Aha has is wide-ranging and absolutely broken, having the ability to unlock fathomless intelligence and reality manipulation with an unknown amount of abilities between the two. And since the sheer amount of power Aha gives with their blessing is so unreasonably immense, even though Elation is not considered one of the strongest paths in terms of destructive power, it has Emanators that can single-handedly conquer the cosmos, as we've seen with level 999. But to sum things up for Elation, we can't be too sure how Aha finds people to bless. Clearly, they choose them on a basis of whether they're entertaining or not, but how they find these entertaining people, we don't exactly know. Odds are they just roam around to different worlds and choose someone on a whim. On a side note, I got a DM saying that the Phantos Moon can technically classify as an Emanator since Aha drew it, and I can't get that out of my head. Let me know what you think. So skipping over Akavili and Enna, we come to Fu Li, who is the most complicated on this list, but at least we know very well how they work, because their Emanators are pure children of Anasrava and quite literally are born Emanators of Remembrance. How many of them there are out there is unknown to us, but what we do know is that they are scattered around so far and few between that it is rare for two of them to ever meet each other. But how they come into existence is what makes these individuals so special, because you see, Fu Li isn't an Aeon that exists yet. They exist at the end of the timeline and reflect and refract their memories of their existence into the past, and this presence can solidify and shatter. And inside of these shards of Fu Li's body are these pure children of Anasrava. Quite literally the master of Anasrava's multipolar mitosis children. But going into the abilities that these cosmic Nepo babies naturally have appears to be unparalleled control control over Memoria and all things memories, which extends to utilizing the path of Enigmata and every single ability that Memo Keepers and Cremators have, which includes but is not limited to erasing memories, forging memories, changing memories, fixing memories, and also collecting memories. And this also includes Memo Keepers. What? And by Memo Keepers, I mean Evernight has been shown to be able to pull a Memo Keeper's soul from their Dharmakaya or their spirit body and do whatever she wanted with it. Because Memo Keepers are just humanoid memories. They turn their physical body into memories, which makes them weak to Evernight in general. So when Evernight comes along and pulls their soul out of their Dharmakaya and puts it into a body that she can also control, like this thing, it becomes absurd. So even though Memo Keepers can't physically die, Emanators of Remembrance have more control over their souls and bodies than they do, which is why Black Swan is so terrified of Evernight. And it's also known that a child of Renasriva created the Garden of Recollection faction. However, we don't know who it is that did that. And as for a final ability, every single child of Renasriva has the potential to ascend into Fu Li themselves and become the Aeon of Remembrance for this cycle. Before, of course, Fu Li resets everything at the end of the Cosmos, shatters again, and Bootstrap paradoxes themselves. And this is also something, of course, March 7th could do if Evernight didn't, of course, erase her memory of being a child of Renasriva, or remembering that children of Renasriva exist. So moving on to the blessings we know the least about, we have the Arbitrators, not to be confused with Evanesia. These guys are emanators of the Equilibrium and seek to establish a zero-sum state of the universe, not to be confused with zero-sum game. We know next to nothing about these guys other than the fact that they are mistaken as gods on the worlds they govern, so they are really strong, and that they like to make concepts balance each other out, with concepts like love, hate, joy, and sorrow being said to have been created to satisfy the Arbitrator's obsession with zero-sum balances, though I'm not exactly sure what that means. And that's just about everything we know about the Arbitrators. So continuing on to Emanators that we know very little about, we have IX's Self-Annihilators that may or may not all be Emanators. We only know of Acheron and possibly Zephyro, who doesn't want anything to do with IX at all. Actually, both of them don't. But unfortunately, IX is one of the two known Aeons that doesn't care about what people think. Because similar to Elation Emanators, they seem to have access to all of IX's power. Because IX, of course, doesn't care enough to regulate them. The only thing that really holds these Emanators back is using this power might just kill the wielder, because Acheron is already in bad shape and she doesn't even use her abilities very often. And every time we've seen her fight, she wasn't even trying. Yet her nihility caused memory loss is still a persistent issue, along with her loss of the sense of taste. Now, so far as we know, we don't have any idea if Self-Annihilators are emanators of IX, but there is a reason for their existence, because like it or not, they all spread the shadow of IX wherever they go. They are walking calamities that Dr. Primitive of all people speculates to be proof that IX actually makes Self-Annihilators on purpose, but we can't be too sure. Whether Blobby Boy knows what they're doing or even cares, we don't know yet. And as far as abilities go, besides being ludicrously strong, Acheron takes it upon herself to guide people through the nihility so that they can find rest. And one of these manifestations of IX is called the Horizon of Existence that we saw in Penacony. Another one is this white space in Amphorius that I am still convinced the real Acheron helped us out of, because at this moment we were between life and death, which would be nothingness. So it turns out the only time Acheron isn't lost is when she's in the void. And next up on our list is none other than our favorite Aeon of Friendly Fire, Lon, who, while being an Aeon with a more narrow path, makes up for this by giving large portions of power to their Arbiter generals. who we now know classify as Emanators. And the way that Lan gives their blessings out is very unique. Instead of favoring a certain individual, Lan favors a position, and grant whoever occupies this position a spiritus. And this of course is the position of general, and all flagships have one, even though not all of them are still alive. The process of assuming this title of general involves 3 ceremonies: the rainbow ornament, the rainbow's gaze, and the bestowal of spiritus, which we don't exactly know what these mean, but from context clues we can assume that the rainbow's ornament means taking up the title of general, then you get gazed at by Lan, and then you get the spiritus. And these also apparently involve some other challenges, because Yao Guang had to do something involving dodging arrows in a realm of pure consciousness. Hopefully we get some more details on that later, because that sounds awesome. So far as we know, every spiritus has different abilities, with Jing Yuan essentially having a Susanoo, Fei Xiao having a fox summon that matches her speed, and Yao Guang having the ability to see the destinies of Woe and Wheel with the Kalachakra Sky Plume. And besides all having the ability to summon a Lux Arrow airstrike from Lan, that is all we know about the Arbiter Generals. There's also Marshal Hua, of course, but what she is something we know nothing about. And next we have the history fictionologists of Mythos, and these guys are tricky, because it's unknown how they become Emanators, but we do know that their goals are not to cause harm, even though we, the Star Rail community, give them a horrible reputation. What they do is weird and convoluted, so I'll just give you an example. Since they, just like Remembrance followers, believe that only the past matters and that determines the future, if they come across a world that was destroyed, they will use their abilities to change that history into a better reality for that world. So if a planet blows up, you can destroy all records of that planet's existence, so you can falsify the records and potentially bring that world back into existence, quite literally gaslighting the planet back together again. We don't know if this is their goal exactly, but since it says that they act with an altruism that is hard to comprehend, this at least makes sense to me. If a planet blows up and no one is there to remember it being destroyed, does it still exist? A history fictionologist would say yes and turn those false memories into a reality. It's kind of like Cypher's lies become reality thing. Elation and Enigmata have this strange overlap going on. But that is all we know about the Emanators of Mythos, which brings us to Nanook's Lord Ravagers. And I won't spend too much time on them because I'm sure you all know how they work already. They get destroyed, thrown into the Warforge, fixed up with antimatter, and pop out ready to kill the Aeon that they used to follow, hopped up on golden blood. They also have this strange sense of wholesome camaraderie where they all gather together to witness Iron Tomb's actualization, or Finun's rise, possibly both, but the humanoid ones all wrote Finun proverbs, which I think is oddly endearing. They're monsters, but they're not monsters to each other. And next up, we have Noose. And despite Noose being a computer and the most straightforward Aeon, is still very much misunderstood. Because no, not everyone in the Genius Society is an Emanator. So far as we know, there are only 3. Xandar, Dr. Primitive, and Madame Herta. But these 3 all have something in common. Unlike many other geniuses, their areas of study all explore subjects that Noose doesn't know about. Xandar made Noose, so of course he counts. Dr. Primitive is specializing in evolutionary research, which is one of the grandest mysteries of the cosmos, and Herta is looking into any and all mysteries of the cosmos in general. And the Simulated Universe project is basically Noose's bread and butter. But she also solved the solitary waves theory, which pretty much exposed how and why Noose is ever calculating yet never figures out how the cosmos will end. Simply put, the paths pull against each other and are constantly switching the answer. So Noose never stops calculating in a catch-22 situation. Must be that persistence inherited from Xandar. And as far as abilities go, we aren't too sure what Noose's power allows their Emanators to do. Most likely something to do with extrapolations, mental capacity, and understanding things that can also be weaponized. But as far as we know, Noose uses the geniuses as neurons and gives special powers to those they can learn the most from. It's a give and take equivalent exchange situation. Pretty cut and dry. It is a computer. So for something more spicy, let's move on to Klapoth, who we have no clue why or how this Aeon has Emanators, since they pay little attention to humanity at all, but the IPC tends to collect shards of Clopal's body, and only the higher-ups have access to it. And it just so happens that the head of the department responsible for collecting the shards of Clopal's body is one of the two Emanators. So since we don't know, I'll offer my speculation. I think that the IPC is doing some ritual with the pieces of Clopal's body and making themselves Emanators, very similar to Diamond and the Stonehearts, then claiming that they have the Aeon's favor even though they once again are known for their indifference, and doing whatever they want in the name of preservation, claiming to have the Aeon's trust when in reality they are just being terrorists. And that is exactly what Oswaldo Schneider does, the guy who, while isn't an Emanator yet, is on the fast track for promotion. Food for thought. I just stole Clopal's power and now I do whatever I want in their name because I know the Aeon will never care enough to stop me. Classic IPC move. So that's what I think the Emanator situation is with the preservation, but I can't prove it yet. So anyway, let's move on to the propagations Emanators, and this is the easiest and quickest to explain on the list. You ready? Taziron bred special offspring to be Emanators. And that's what Scaricabaz is. See? Very simple. And as far as Terminus goes, we know Elio, in that Terminus allows him to see the timelines that have already transpired, which allows Elio to pick and choose the endings he wants to achieve in the ultimate goal of saving the universe from destruction and giving everyone a happy ending. And that is the point of the script. Elio is cherry-picking the endings he wants, so things have to follow a strict chain of events in order for things to progress properly. For example, if Silverwolf intervened in Emphoria, she would have fixed everything before we even got our remembrance powers, and that would have caused problems going forward. So unfortunately, Cyrene has to suffer for the sake of Elio's plot. And that is all we know about the finality for now. And in the second to last spot, we have Xipe, the best Aeon that makes absolutely no sense. You see, we really have no clue how this Aeon works because it's Penacony. It appears that Xipe's harmonic strings are ascended from normal people, but then become incarnations of Xipe and become part of their harmony hive mind. And these embodiments of Xipe are called Alienev, the commander of the Eternal Centurion, Dominicus, the wisher of the Harmonious Choir, Constantina, the singer of the Pentacoustic Theater, and Beatriz, the merrymaker of the Blissful Ball. We know nothing of the last two, but Alienev shows up in times of war and punishments, but at some point one of them died to Nanook and became Selenova. Which is why I say that there is an individual person inside of each and every single one of these harmonic strings. Because otherwise, how could this have happened? And we are familiar with Dominicus's ability to grant wishes. Harmony is weird and we don't know how these people are chosen to be turned into harmonic strings since they all harmonize together in the family. Maybe some harmonize more than others? I don't know. I don't like how Xipe works. And finally, we have Yaoshi, who, for one reason or another, blesses people with immortality and turns them into trees for their own personal garden, which seems to take away the very concept of death from them. Because according to Evanescia, Shuhu is incapable of death, and she probably is as well. But this isn't all, because as we saw in Plain Arcadia, just a few cells from Shuhu were able to change a person's entire DNA structure, and that is him in a weakened state. And odds are, Evanescia is something similar because she is also one of Yaoshi's Emanator trees. Aha just hit a devious lick and stole an Emanator, very much like how Nanook stole Alienev from Xipe. Just less killing, more stealing. The reason why she has a human form now and not a tree is probably because she imaginated herself a human form so she can walk around in it. She is Graphia's student after all, and she did tell us that she was a natural. And finally, that is just about all we know about the Emanators and how each and every single Aeon regards them and what their abilities do. Because this is every Aeon's blessing explained. Oh boy, that was a lot. Did you get all that? The reason why I wanted to make this video was because looking at my last video, I've come to understand how confusing Emanators are and how little Hoyo has done to remedy this situation. But nevertheless, this video will be a one-stop shop for all things Emanators for the time being, because I painstakingly went through every single one that we currently know about, to the extent that we know about them. So I hope this is helpful. I'm sure there will be a lot to learn in the future because there are paths I had to leave out and details I had to skip over, but just like last time, I am happy to just update my findings. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.